In 1903, a timber speculator named Elias Cord followed a seasonal creek into a narrow valley east of Redmont and found what he was looking for: a dense stand of spruce and ponderosa pine, and enough flat ground to build a mill. Within 4 years, Lighthope had grown from a tent camp to a proper company town of some 400 souls. Cord Timber built the cottages, ran the store, and cut the timber. A superintendent named Roy Gatch ran the day-to-day, and by most accounts ran it fairly. The company changed hands after the First World War, and with it, the town quietly changed character. Less a company operation, more simply a community that had a mill at its edge. And that is what Lighthope remains today. The families are still largely the same ones who arrived in those early years. The mill still runs. The community hall the workers raised in those early years still hosts a dance on the last Friday of every month. It is not a place that makes the papers. It never has. But the lumber keeps coming down out of those hills, same as it always did. Whether there was any poetry in a man named Cord making his fortune in timber, no one in Lighthope ever thought to ask.
Hello, and welcome back to Redmont. We're just going to take a moment here to look at everything built so far on this map. Of course, right in the very center here, we have our main city of Redmont. To the right, just off near the edge there, we have our small community of Honeybrook, and off in the distance, towards the east, we have the small farming community of Willard. For this week's episode, I'm going to be building the small community of Lighthope, and it's going to be a logging town, a mill town, and it's going to be located up in the mountains, right down here where we're looking. Very first thing I'm going to be doing is removing the trees. And I'm also going to be turning on the contour lines so I can get a really good look at the landscape here, see what I'm working with. And right away we can see that the terrain is pretty uneven, and we're going to have to do a few alterations in here to make it suitable for a building location for a small town. I'm going to flatten out a small section of the land here just to make it suitable for a townsite. I don't want to alter the landscape too much. I want to keep most of the terrain features in place. I want the hills, I want the slopes. I don't want to just flatten out everything completely and remove everything that makes this location unique. The roads that are going to connect the town to the rest of our map are going to come up through these small little valleys here, and I'm just going to smooth out the terrain just a little bit, make the approach a little more convenient for cars and trucks to get up to this location. At this point, I really don't have a clear idea of where I want to put the roads or the layout of the actual town. So just to get the ball rolling here, I'm just going to draw out some roads just to start, and I'll edit this as I go. Going to use a simple connection to connect them to the main highway. These roads aren't going to carry a lot of traffic at the moment, so no need to overthink this right now. I also have a back road that connects to Willard. I do not want this to be like used by traffic very much. It is like a old dirt back road. So in Road Builder, I edited the road to have a speed limit of 5 kilometers, which pretty much cuts out all the traffic using it. Occasionally I get an odd car, that's fine. I just don't want like highway traffic cutting up through this dirt road. This is going to be a really small town with not a huge number of unique features. I thought it might be fun to play around with the terrain a little bit here. I'm going to create a very short cliff face that is visible from town. I'll use Move It to move them all into place, even out the heights so they all match. And recolor them so the rock colors match the rest of the map. After playing around with the road layout for a little bit, I just decided on a very simple grid. This is essentially a planned community, so no need to overthink it. I'm only going to be placing a handful of commercial buildings here. It's a tiny town of 400 people. There aren't going to be a lot of commercial buildings, just grocery stores, drugstore. I'm using UK convenience shop here. I think it has a post office embedded in it. And because we only have a population of 400, I'm just going to go with the smallest school I can find. This asset was modified from one of the signature buildings from the Southwest pack. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It makes perfect little small apartment blocks for this company town. One characteristic of a company town is the repetitive nature of the houses. For an early 20th century company town, the company that built it wouldn't have like a lot of imagination. So the houses would be repetitive, it'd be all the same type, they'd all be very small. So for this build, I'm going with 3 or 4 different housing types, and I'm just going to repeat them throughout the entire core of our little town here. Once it stops being a company town around the middle of the 20th century, that's when we'll start seeing houses of different styles, larger homes, larger properties on the outskirts around the small village. Another feature of company towns is they tend to have all the services, so a small clinic, a small fire station, small police station. We already have a post office. We have an elementary school, but I didn't think there was enough to build an entire high school, so I just used a zoning cube and embedded it in the elementary school. So we have the functionality, I just don't have a building for it. And of course, the town wouldn't be complete without a small trailer park as well. I also wanted a building to represent the community hall for our small town. I'm going to go with an Eastern European house here with an attached courtyard. I think this works very well. I'm also going to be switching out the vanilla grass surfaces here for something a little more suitable and get rid of this really ugly grass surface down here. I hate this. And use the fill tool here to fill in the larger areas with greener surfaces. This is really imperfect. I'm still on the fence about using this tool, but it is a lot faster than trying to draw this all in by hand. Before I create the mill, of course, we're going to need a source of timber, so I'm going to draw in a little back road over here and create a couple of wood lots. I'm only going to be creating a couple of them next to town here. As I fill in the rest of the map and draw more roads into the backcountry, I'll add more of these throughout different sections of the map as industries grow and as our need for resources increases. I'm going to be removing some props from the houses. These were obviously designed for suburban landscapes. I don't need the fences. I especially don't need the hedges. They don't fit with our climate or the small town aesthetic here. So, and also just remove some of the excessive props that always come with the vanilla houses. It's now time to add the mill. I'm going to go with I forget what this is, a plywood factory or fiberboard factory from the supply chain DLC. Just go place it here and add the expansions to it, make it complete. And to make it a little more unique, I'm going to be building a custom wood storage lot adjacent to it. My biggest gripe with industrial buildings in City Skylines 2 is everything is just way too pristine looking. A lumberyard like this is going to be a bit disorganized. It's going to be really messy. They're certainly not in neat little squares with all the logs in perfectly aligned rows. I'm using Find It to locate the log piles, and I'm just going to mix and match these into small groupings. Different piles of logs, different orientations, and just fill in the area around here. One very important feature to a sawmill is a scrap burner for scrap wood. I'm going to be using a custom asset here by Harbor Master J. For This was created before custom assets were available on the mod store, and it was used to create custom lighthouses. Now that we have beautiful lighthouse assets in game, I don't need it for that purpose, so I find other uses for it when I can. A scrap wood burner is a bit old-fashioned for modern mills. Pretty much every scrap of wood now is used in some way to create wood products, from like fiberboard and pressboard and all that sort of stuff, so not very much is burnt. I just remember from childhood these gigantic beehive burners, which we don't have in game, and I would love to see a custom asset for one. This is a good stand-in. But yeah, as I was saying, wood is not really burnt in sawmills anymore, but it's a memory I have from childhood, and it just doesn't feel complete without one. I'm going to use a smokestack embedded inside it to make it look like it's in use. For the detailing, I'm going to be using decals and surfaces stacked on top of one another to create interesting surface, make it look really messy, disorganized, overgrown, all that sort of stuff. Most of this is going to be created with Real Vision decals and Gaga XM's dirt surfaces. I believe these are piles of sand, which I'm going to be using to represent sawdust. I'm just going to use Move It here to sink them into the ground a little bit to hide that edge that you can see around them there. And more Real Vision decals here to kind of find a surface that matches the sand color, kind of make it look like it's the material underneath has been spread out or moved around. There's no real magic to how I'm doing this, it's just layering surfaces and decals up until I get a surface that I like. Have found to be a bit of a challenge is blending the edges of the surfaces and decals into the surrounding map surface here. Finding surfaces that actually blend nicely and smoothly from one to the other there aren't a lot of them here. This Real Vision dried grass surface here is probably the best one I found so far. And as a finishing touch, I'm just going to be adding random piles of scrap wood all around. Bit of heavy machinery just to make it look like some work is happening down here. I also wanted to create a covered storage area for finished wood products, and looking for the assets to try to find something that might be suitable, I came across I think this is a bus depot extension. This is a static version of it. I'm just going to sink them slightly into the ground just to get rid of the loading bays or the bus bays here so you can't see them. And now we have a little covered area for plywood or finished lumber. Why do I have all these bushes, decorative shrubs inside a mill? That makes literally no sense. Industrial areas should look messy and dirty, not perfectly clean. It's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why, when you build out industrial areas, they just don't look right. It doesn't make your city look very realistic. It really makes the city look more like a toy city than anything real. So we have to come in here and do a bit of custom editing to the surfaces here just to kind of mess it up a little bit. Also connect it to our woodlot next door. And honestly, I think for any detailing work you do want to do in your city, this is probably the one detailing step here that will make the city look far more realistic than just using the vanilla assets right out of the box. It seemed appropriate that there'd be an electrical transformer station somewhere in town. I don't need the functionality of one though. Game mechanics, it's really not necessary, but I did want the visual appearance of one, so I'm just using a static version here. This has no functionality, it's just purely decorative. realized there was no visible sources of water available for this town, so it seemed appropriate to add a water tower. Another thing I've been doing is editing down my detailing steps to something a little more simplified for areas that I want to add a little bit of detail, but I didn't want to get carried away with it. For these areas that I'm working on below here, it's just the oil industry surface and 2 decals, one lighter, one darker, and just layered up. And I think this works for, an area that you don't want to spend a huge amount of time detailing, but you do want a little bit. I did add one more for a bit more variation, but you don't necessarily need it, and it is very easy to do. Of course, I'm going to have to use some net lanes here to cover up the vanilla dirt roads, just to make them look a little more realistic. And of course, some bushes and trees just to tie everything together. Net lanes here are created by Mike Builds. You could locate them through his YouTube channel. He doesn't post them to the PDX mod store. I'm not sure why. They're very useful to disguise the vanilla roads, make them look a little more old and worn. I am still waiting for custom road assets where these sorts of surfaces are just baked directly into the road, and I don't have to do this anymore because this is a really tedious step. Okay, I'm just gonna shut up for a little while here and focus on some detailing and just play some music. To help tie in the cliff assets here to the rest of the landscape, I'm going to be using some of Gaga XM's rock surfaces here to blend it in. Everything from small gravel up to large stones. There is a bit of an ugly edge where the two different net lane surfaces for the roads meet up. I'm just going to use some decals here to blend these in a little bit, make them look a little more natural. Service buildings never seem to have enough parking, so I'm just going to add a parking lot down here. This could both work for the clinic and for the elementary school. Of course, our school will need a sports field. I usually just go with a soccer field. I find it to be a very generic type of sports field. It can be used for any number of purposes. It's just a big, wide open rectangle of grass. To create the illusion of some worn patches on our sports field here, I'm just going to be doubling up the grass surfaces, drawing one on top of the other, and just leaving the areas where I want it to look a little more worn, just leaving those exposed. One quick hack to define property lines for larger properties or irregular sized or shaped properties is just use a row of trees. I went a little crazy here of adding bushes and shrubs to the rest of the surrounding area. The sizes I used here are way too big. I have to come back in here and just make them a little smaller. They look fine from a distance, but when you get in close, it doesn't look right at all. For the area just above the cliffs, it's really difficult to align these assets to get them to look perfect. So adding a few trees and shrubs in here just to disguise some of the seams is an easy way to hide this. To make the supply chain complete, we need one more building. We need the paper mill. I'm a bit on the fence with this one. Aesthetically, it doesn't really fit the rest of the city, the old brickwork. I don't think it really fits in with, this should be a bit more of a modern looking city. I wish there was a different paper mill asset I could use here, but this is the only one available. I'm going to align it in such a way that it looks like this cargo building from the train cargo hub here is attached to the paper mill directly. For the moment, I'm just placing the building down for its functionality. I will be coming back at a later date to detail out this industrial area more appropriately, but that is for a future episode. I'm just going to take a final look here to see how it looks in relation to the rest of the city. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for sticking around to the very end. I really do appreciate it. Next week, we will be back in Monte Palma. I look forward to seeing you all then. Everybody take care, and I will see you next time. Bye.